Minecraft Java and Bedrock Edition have a lot of differences, we all know that. However, when it comes to building farms, then Bedrock has some super overpowered advantages. So, in this video, I'm gonna show you 5 farms that are much better in Minecraft Bedrock. Let's jump right into it. Okay, starting out we do with arguably the most important farm in the game, and that is of course iron. The way that iron farms work is pretty similar across the board. We use villagers to spawn iron golems, which we're then gonna melt in lava to get the iron ingot drops out of them. So far, nothing new. However, when it comes to how to actually spawn these iron golems, there's a big difference between Java and Bedrock Edition. See, in Java, there are essentially 2 ways to get an iron golem. Either you put 3 villagers in one room and scare them with a zombie, or alternatively, you put 5 villagers into a room without a zombie and just let them gossip a bit. The way these Java iron farms then work is relatively simple. You build any type of contraption where the possible spawning area for the iron golem is limited so that we can use a water mechanism to flush them into the lava. This right here in the background, for example, would be my iron farm design that I have a full guide on, just in case you want to check it out later. But in Bedrock, the whole thing looks quite a bit different. Here, you need at least 10 villagers to spawn an iron golem, plus 20 beds in total, and each of the 10 villagers needs to be connected to a working station and be able to interact with it. Only if all these requirements are met, the game will consider your construction an actual village and start spawning iron golems. As for the basic iron farm design itself, that's actually pretty simple. It's just make a 5x5 block hole that goes 9 blocks deep into the earth. At the bottom, you're going to place down your 20 beds, 5 on the one side, 5 on the other, and then a second layer on top. Over that, build a floor out of 20 workstations. You can use whichever workstation you like, barrels, fletching tables, doesn't matter. Put a torch in to make sure that no mobs spawn, and then put 20 villagers inside of here. You can either bring 20 villagers in directly from your villager spawner if you have one, or you just bring 2 villagers and then step by step breed a population of 20 villagers. Once you have these 20 villagers, put a roof over the whole thing in a way that now the hole is only 3 blocks deep. Now, in one corner, you're going to use a hopper as a collection system into a chest, put a couple of signs over the hopper like I show right here, in a way that the lava will stay exactly in this corner. Now, build a little water flow to push the iron golems into the lava, and that is the basic design for a Bedrock iron farm. However, when it comes to these spawning mechanics, there is one key difference between Java and Bedrock Edition that most players don't know about, but we can use this to our advantage in Bedrock Edition to massively increase the spawn rates of those iron farms. Let me explain. See, in Java, only 1 iron golem per villager group can be spawned every 30 seconds. The way the game ensures this 30-second cooldown is that villagers can only spawn an iron golem if there's no other iron golem nearby. This is also the reason why in Java, if we want to increase the spawn rates, we have to place those villager groups so incredibly far apart so that no one accidentally sees the iron golems from the other group, which would then block their own spawns. That's kinda tedious. However, the way it works in Bedrock is quite a bit different. Here, the game doesn't really care if there are iron golems nearby, but instead it limits how many iron golems can be spawned per village. Given that all the villagers in your farm are considered the same village, that will also limit the spawn rate to roughly 1 per 30 seconds. However, we can kinda sorta trick the game here. See, what we can do is, and I want to give a huge shout out to BlazedMC, I didn't come up with this idea myself, I saw it in one of his videos. What we can do is go round about 120 blocks away from our iron farm and bring 2 villagers from our villager spawner to this position. What we then do is we place down 2 beds for these 2 villagers and also 2 working stations of our choice so that the 2 villagers connect to the beds as well as the working stations. Now that we're over 100 blocks away from our farm, putting down beds and working stations will essentially be considered creating a new village by the game. What we can then do is build another iron farm right next to our pre-existing one and bring the 2 faraway villagers all the way into this farm. The way we do this is a little bit tedious, but I still think it's worth it. First of all, we want to delete one of the beds and wait till the angry emojis appear next to the villager. Then we bring that bed a couple blocks closer to our farm, place it down again, and wait for the green particles to indicate that the villager has reconnected to the bed. Then do the same thing with his working station, delete it until he loses his job, place it down again next to the bed, and wait for him to pick the job up again. Repeat the whole process with the other bed, and this way, step by step, you're gonna move this village closer to your farm. Now, very important here, for this process to work, you gotta make sure that in your initial farm, you have 20 beds as well as 20 workstations and 20 adult villagers. You gotta make sure that all the beds and all the workstations are connected to the villagers that are already in your farm. Otherwise, your new villagers are just gonna switch over, and you don't want that. Then, for the second farm, when you build it, it is important that initially you don't yet build any beds or workstations, just make it an empty hole. And then finally, once you brought these two villagers step by step into the farm, then as the last step, you want to relocate their beds and their working stations, just like we showed before, into the actual farm. Then you can just place more beds and more working stations, throw them a bunch of food, and essentially breed an entire new village population. If you did everything correctly, then everyone in your initial farm is part of that quote-unquote village, and everyone of your other farm is still considered part of that far-away village, which means both farms, even though right next to each other, can spawn iron golems individually of one another. And of course, if you want to crank this up to 11, then you can build as many more of these farms as you want. It's just a bit tedious to bring the villagers in from far away step by step. And as always, if you could leave a quick like for the video, that would be very nice because it helps me big time with the YouTube algorithm. So thank you so much for your support. Okay, I agree that this iron farm technique is quite a bit tedious to implement. But I promise you, this next farm now is much simpler. Let's talk about how to generate infinite fuel. See, I think we all know how to make an infinite lava farm. Just place down a couple of cauldrons with a platform over them that we then fill up with lava. Add some pointed dripstones under it, and the lava is now going to drip through the dripstones into the cauldrons, which will fill up over time so that we can take the lava out with a bucket. Everybody knows this. However, where in Java Edition, you have to wait for an eternity until those cauldrons fill up, in Bedrock, you can use a little trick to instantly fill them up and generate so much more lava. Here's how you do that. First of all, also here we start out with a cauldron, but this one, we place it into the ground. Then, to the side of it, we build a row of blocks into which we later place a water bucket so that we have a water stream that goes towards the cauldron. Over the cauldron, we're now going to build a lava platform, just like with every fuel farm, and also here, add a pointed dripstone under it. The lava now drips into the cauldron, but here comes our trick. To the other side of the cauldron, we now place a dry sponge, and when we open up the water source on the other side so the water can flow out, then for some reason, the moment the sponge soaks up the water, it will just instantly fill up the cauldron with lava. All you gotta do then is stop the water flow, dry the sponge again, and then you can repeat the whole process infinitely. This way, there is no waiting time for the cauldron to fill, and you're being showered in lava buckets. That is something you just can't do in Java, unfortunately. Oh, and by the way, if you want to see more great Minecraft farms and tutorials, then you might want to think about maybe leaving the channel a sub because I have so much more to share. Welcome to the crew! Up next, we need to talk about one of the most essential resources in the game, and that would be gold. As I'm sure most of you know, when building gold farms, there are essentially two ways to build them. Number one would be the dangerous way, where you go into the nether, build a super high tower, and then construct huge platforms of magma blocks. These platforms then will serve as spawning areas for zombified piglins, which we're then going to lure into a falling pit by placing down turtle eggs. By the way, if you want to learn how to build such a farm, then I already have a great guide on this. However, while it is all nice and dandy when showcasing creative mode here, when you play this in survival, things get quite a bit tougher. You need special equipment to not take damage when walking on the magma blocks. You gotta be very careful to not accidentally spawn gas, which will instantly kill you, and so many more things can go wrong. I wouldn't necessarily want to build this in hardcore. So, the safer alternative would be to build your gold farm in the overworld, and this is exactly where we have the big difference. See, the way that it works in Java is you need to build these ginormous obsidian cubes. This is because in Java, every portal in the overworld has a very small chance at any given moment to spawn a zombified piglin next to it. The bigger the portal, the higher the chance. So in order to maximize the odds, you want to make these big cubes where every layer is an individual portal, and then also here, lure the piglins out with a turtle egg. As I'm sure you can see, there is one big problem. You need a frickin' gazillion obsidian to build one of these things, and one of those cubes doesn't even have good rates. Ideally, you want to have multiple of them. It's insanely expensive. However, in Bedrock, things are looking so much simpler. Here, building a gold farm in the overworld is absolutely no problem. All you gotta do is build one single 22 by 22 portal. That's very much possible, and then that's already all the obsidian you need. Up next, stand next to the portal with a flint and steel and turn it off and on a couple of times until you see that on one side a zombified piglin spawns. Each time you turn the portal on, there's a chance to spawn one of these piglins. And the good thing is, they will always spawn on the same side. So, on whichever side he appeared, that is where you want to build some sort of collection system. You can make a trench, you can build a water flow, really do whatever you see fit. All we need to do to turn this into a great gold farm is making a mechanism that will automatically turn the portal off and on rapidly. To do that, on one corner, we want to put a dispenser next to the portal, into which we put a bucket of powdered snow. Leading into that dispenser, we want to make a rapid redstone on-off signal with a comparator that we right-click to turn on so that the redstone torch is on, surrounded by 3 blocks like this and a lever on the end. It's a very high-frequency on-off signal that we can just connect into the dispenser to have it put and then take away again the snow very quickly. This is going to be the impulse to turn the portal off. And then to turn it on, make an 8x3 ring of building blocks behind the portal like this. In this ring, we now want to place down 1 observer pointing inwards, and then 5 observers looking into the opposite direction like I show right here. Then place a couple of trapdoors on the side, turn this into a little container, and place lava into it. What this does is, through the observers, the lava is going to be constantly updated, which means it gives a continuous pulse to constantly turn the portal on, and the dispenser in the bottom corner is always going to turn it off again. This way, we have this super easy gold farm with the portal going on and off, spawning bazillions of piglins that will give us so much gold. But alright, let's go from one essential resource to the next, and that would be sugarcane. We all know it, we all need it, because without it, there's no paper. Now, when it comes to the traditional sugarcane farms, it's pretty much as simple as it gets. Build a row of hoppers to collect the loot into a chest, then put mud blocks on top of the hoppers because hoppers can pick up items through mud blocks. Place a row of water on the side, on top of that a row of building blocks, followed by a row of pistons, and at the very top a row of observers. On the back, you want to connect a redstone signal like I show right here, and then you can already plant the sugarcane on top of the mud blocks and close the whole thing off. This is the basic sugarcane farm design that we all know, and it will give you a decent yield. However, when it comes to sugarcane, there is one huge difference between Java and Bedrock, and that is that in Java, you can't use bone meal to grow sugarcane faster like you would do on other type of crops. But in Bedrock, you actually can, and here is how we can use that to our advantage to get so much more sugarcane much easier. Also here, what we're gonna do is build the similar farm design that I previously showcased. Only difference is that we're not building a row of sugarcane, but really only one single block. It should look something like this then. And now, to turn this super simple machine into an absolute monster of a sugarcane producer, we place down a dispenser to the side that points towards the sugarcane and fill it with a bunch of bone meal. All we then gotta do is create another rapid redstone on-off signal like this right here, and then as you see, the bone meal dispenser is gonna grow the sugarcane so rapidly that it just showers us in sugarcane. This strategy only works in Bedrock because in Java, as we said, bone meal can't be used on sugarcane. Okay, the next one on the list is one of the biggest differences between Minecraft Java and Bedrock. And that is how Bedrock is notorious for duplication glitches. Here's how you can use that to your advantage and literally duplicate any type of item that you have. Starting out, we do by placing down 2 cauldrons that need to face into each other. Then, next to one of the cauldrons, we place down a piston that faces towards the cauldrons, and on the other side, we leave one block free to then also place a piston on that side. Next, use 5 pieces of redstone to connect the 2 pistons, and then on either of the 2 sides, place down a redstone repeater, which will give 1 tick of delay. All you then need to do is create a redstone on-off signal to connect into this build. The way we do this is place down a comparator and right-click it once so that the redstone torch is on, which you will then surround with 3 blocks of redstone like this. On the backside, you're going to place a lever to turn it on and off, and that's all you got to do. Just connect this one into the repeater that we just built, and just like that, the 2 pistons are now going to constantly activate and deactivate, pushing the hoppers back and forth. That's exactly what we want. Now, all you gotta do to duplicate your items is use a bundle and fill it up with whichever item you want, for example a stack of diamonds. Then, turn the machine off for a second and put it into one of the cauldrons. It should now move back and forth between the 2. After that, turn the machine on again and then stand next to it and spam open both of these cauldrons. Do this for a while, and then after some time it should bug out and for some reason create the same type of bundle in one as well as the other hopper. If you then switch the machine off again, you can take out both of these bundles, and there you go, you now have successfully duplicated your items. This whole thing is something that you can simply not do in Java at all. However, before we end the video, I have one more bonus farm for you because it stayed all the way to the end. And this one is probably the most overpowered XP farm in the entirety of Minecraft. Let's check it out. See, when it comes to XP farms, there are a ton of different designs, but probably the most popular one would be the one with the armadillos and the silverfish. Now, I'm not going to get into the full build right here because it's actually pretty simple and I already have a full guide on that if you want to check it out. But what it basically boils down to is, you make a small container with a campfire in the middle, lure armadillos onto the campfire and then scare them with a nearby zombie so that they curl up and don't take that fire damage. Then, all you gotta do is throw in a potion of infestation, and these armadillos, receiving the damage ticks from the fire, will start spawning tons and tons and tons of silverfish. Now, in Java Edition, this is already it. You can take out the silverfish by hand, gain the experience, and it's all nice and dandy. However, in Bedrock, you can crank this mechanic up to 11 with one simple change. Just a quick addition on the side here, in Bedrock the campfire method for the armadillos unfortunately doesn't work anymore. So in Bedrock, you build this farm like I show right here, with a sand block, a cactus on top, and then a composter. If you then funnel the armadillos in like this, it will have the same effect that the campfire used to have. What we want to do here is take the exact same farm, and on top of the fence at the exit, you just want to place down a trapdoor. Next, create a redstone on-off signal with a comparator that you switch on with a right-click, surrounded by 3 blocks of redstone. Add a lever to turn it on and off, and then connect this redstone signal to the trapdoor. The trapdoor should now spam open and close all the time. Now, here's the trick that will give us infinite experience completely AFK. Over the trapdoor, we want to place a temporary block and then throw a trident from the side onto this side of the block right here. Delete the temporary block so that the trident falls down onto the trapdoor, and when you turn it on again, then ideally what should happen is that the trident falls down. If it doesn't, just quickly delete the trapdoor and place it facing in a different direction. However, once the trident lays flat on top of the trapdoor, all the silverfish under it will automatically die due to the trident, and because you were the one to technically throw the trident, that means all the experience will go directly to you, even if you're just standing AFK next to it. And now, check out these super helpful farms here that you can literally build in just 1 minute. See you next time, and until then, craft well.